I'm excited to be here. And I'm going to start. So we're going to talk about competency-based and some of the shifting practices and thoughts. And
you have to stand in between the two TVs. I'm kidding. I'm joking.
And my intent is to help you get an understanding, a ground level understanding, not to make you an expert. All right. And I will tell you that I've been in education for 35 years now. And so sometimes I talk educationese. And so just time out and be like, I don't know what that word means. Right. So just back her up, because my goal is not to profess, but to help you guys understand. All right. So that's our plan.
And after you're done, can I do a quick little where we are in the process?
Yeah. At the very end, you want to?
Whenever you
okay.
Tee me up.
Yeah, I will. Yeah, there might be a great spot for that. So I always like to share who I am, just so you're like, who's this lady? Why is she here? Where does she know? Where did Chris find her? One of those. I'm actually live in Wisconsin, and I'm the associate director. It's called I4PL, the Institute for Personalized Learning. I do that part-time, and then I do a ton of consulting across the country. But I am here today with I4PL. I have lots of things I've done in my life. I was assistant superintendent in a school district in Wisconsin, and we were fully competency-based. So I was just sharing, probably about 20 years ago is when we embarked upon it. So got lots of experience in that. I was a middle school principal, and I like to fully disclose it was my favorite job I ever had. I love middle schoolers. That's all I really need to say. Some people are like, girl, you nuts. But I do love them. They're weird, and so are the teachers. It's great. I was an elementary school principal for a decade as well, and I taught. So lots of different things. I'm a mom, a wife, all those other things. And I was sharing, we have 4 kids. And I'm on the other side of parenting than you guys, because ours are 29, 28, 25, 21. So, but I was also sharing when mine were little and I had 4 of them, like I was, you know, the van and all the things, I kept thinking this has got to get easier. So not yet. The verdict's still in. Verdict's still in. So that's a little bit about me. Here's what we're going to do. We are going to start out and just, here's your mission and vision. I would love for you to just take a peek at it. And I know you've seen it before, but I'm asking you to read it differently tonight. And I want you to pick out a word or two or a phrase in the mission and vision that really speaks to you. Like, this is why I love this community district, all the things. You got something? There's any word or phrase in there that kind of speaks to you. It's like, yeah, that's why I'm proud to be here, excited for my kids. Just talk to somebody near you about what you picked out. See what you got.
I like the background disclosure. It's really different than yeah.
Yeah. Perfect timing. Wherever you like, just jump in. Thank you. Thanks for having me. So hopefully everyone had a chance to share. I heard over there some things I was thinking about. I get to go all across the country in school districts, and that last 4 words on the vision is not typically in people's mission and vision. Okay, so the fact that we're saying it's diverse and changing, a lot of people are uncomfortable with that because that's uncertain. It's totally uncertain. It's like, well, that's cute. How do we do something with something so uncertain? My point being, I think once you realize that you're preparing kids for things that you don't know what's coming, you're ahead of the game. I really think you are. So, visions and visions are really interesting things because sometimes they don't mean much. Yours is juicy. Like I like to say, I think it means a lot. So I have a friend who did some doctoral work about missions and visions in school districts. And I like reading things like dissertations, so I'm not going to go through the whole dissertation with you. But part of his study was looking at what missions and visions said in previous decades and how that related to why, like what we're preparing kids for. So if your kids can thrive in a diverse and changing world, I think we're preparing them for what they're going to get, right? But I like to take a little peek at what we have had. So in the 90s, which was probably, you guys are younger, way younger than I am, many of the words in missions and visions were about grade point, getting kids into college, exposing them to the normed every 10-ish years minus COVID, which was like, I don't even know how many years that was, but, and they're re-normed so that half the kids do under the midpoint and half do above. And that midpoint has progressively gotten higher. So when I took the ACT in 1984, what I did would not be the score. I wouldn't get the same score because it's been renormed to be considerably more challenging. All right. So we just need to remember that. Sometimes what we hear is not always fully the whole story, right? With some of that academic achievement. But now let's lean to the right, kind of where you were going, which is what do our learners really need to be successful in life? Okay, so now think about, so there's a couple ways to think about this. One way some people like to think about it is in relation to their own job, right? So like in my job, I know one thing I need to be successful is to be a good communicator, to be on time with things like returned emails and return calls, to be a listener so that I can meet clients' needs. There's no class for that, friends, right? Another way to think about it is maybe if you work or you talk to people who work with people who frustrate them, what aren't those people doing? Like, she never shows up on time. All right, my son's a mechanic. He talks about the other mechanics who aren't on time or don't follow through with the customer, right? Amazingly enough, nothing about actually fixing the car is the problem. It's the other stuff. So think about some of those other pieces that you think people really need to be successful and work in life. See if you can jot those down. An ability to focus, right?
Yeah.
All right, let's hear some of those. What'd you jot down? Collaboration, right? Can you work with somebody else? Or are you the queen of the castle, right? One of the things is people hold up, you know, the valedictorian or the kid who gets the perfect ACT. That was always a thing in our school district, the kid with the 36 on the ACT. And I remember when one of my kids did not get the But she came home and she's like, oh, of course, she got a 36, too bad everyone can't stand her. And I was like, well, were you jealous? Like, you know, I'm calling my own kid out. She's like, no, Mom, literally, she cannot work with anyone. And there's a big study, it's called the valedictorian study, that talks about that. That some of our top learners lack some of these things we're gonna talk about here. They know a lot of stuff and things, as I like to call it. But that collaboration, what else? You have one?
I was conflict resolution. I also wanted to add financial literacy.
For sure. For sure.
We got another comment about that.
Yes. Financial literacy or conflict? Yes.
I conflict, yeah,
Yeah.
that up here, which is a big thing, because I just feel like not so much older children, but now they do not know how to resolve conflicts. I think they have too many options as opposed to how do we mediate this? Let's sit and really think about what's really going on and how do we solve the
Sure.
problem. And so I feel like that is a lot of what's going on outside of school because it's not really pushed. When we were in school, conflict mediation was a real thing.
Sure.
You know, now it's just.
Stay home alone without parents and how to deal with their conflicts.
Exactly.
Yeah.
For sure. And I'm gonna even push it further and say, I see that in corporations all over. So one of my kids works for Target Corporate. She's a coder. So she works at home. And I don't even really understand. I talk like I know what she does. No idea. But this is what I know. The app you use when you go to Target where you just pull up and they put the stuff, that's her. She wrote that app. That's the extent of my knowledge base. So she had to go to conflict resolution school. And I'm thinking, she codes, like she writes things that other people, and she's paid handsomely. Here's the challenge. If she works with people from other countries, her team is crossing terror. She's the leader of the team. She's a white female on a team with people from Japan, Korea, India, and then a bunch of people in California. And they are really struggling to solve these conflicts because in Indian culture, a woman's not going to solve the conflict, right? And so they had to come together to go to Target school. I call it that. That's not what it's called. To learn how to solve conflicts. Nothing about the actual product they're creating, right? So that's definitely a skill. Did you guys have something?
I wrote quite a clear email.
Right, clear feedback. Yes. Yes, communication. Email, whether it's emails, whether it's looking someone in the eye, right? Where I came from, there was a unit in 3rd grade where the kids had to, we talked about the firm handshake and the look in the eye, right? And introducing yourself. And kids then would go out in the community. This is when they were with their families, and their evidence of this communication piece was someone videoing them, walking up to someone, looking them in the eye, shaking their hand and introducing themselves. They're 8 years old. That's an important skill, right? What else? What did you guys have over here?
Having an attention span.
Right.
Do things,
Yep.
focus.
The perseverance, the focus, especially if it's something you don't like.
Yes.
Right?
I wrote consequences, and I think I wrote consequences because everything that you do, there's a consequence. And I was just having this conversation with the freshman that I have. I just feel like there are really no consequences to the things that it does. Like, I'm just gonna say, for example, real quick, like tardies. Okay, if I get a message every day that you're being tardy, what are you doing about it? Okay, I talk to you and I tell you to get to class on time. What is the school do? Because if you feel like you be late for school every day, what are you gonna do in the room? You have to go to work. So I feel like consequences, and not even negative consequences, but consequences.
Sure.
They need to understand that when you don't perform a certain way, this is what happens.
Or when you do, this
Or
is
when
what
you do.
happens. So kids, and this has been forever, kids are prone to what I call magical thinking,
Mhm.
okay? And it's like, and here's how we know sometimes kids, like they just say they want something as a goal, but they don't actually have a plan to get to the goal. So I might have a bit of magical thinking around weight loss, like I'm gonna take off 15 pounds, and then that's all I do. Doesn't happen, that's magical thinking, right? The other side of magical thinking is when kids come home and maybe they were tardy, or maybe they did poorly on something. And the first thing out of their mouth is, well, she just doesn't like me.
Mhm.
She's out to get me. Right? And so this kind of disconnect between you and your thing and the consequence, right? So it's not that there maybe aren't consequences, but there's a disconnect, right? What else? What other skills do you think kids need, or people just in general? Adaptability, thank you. Right? Got to be able to walk into different situations, read the room. Read the Room was the title of the seminar for my sixth graders. Literally, it was called Read the Room. It is such a great middle school thing to talk to kids about. All right? Because, and this is normal, this is how middle schoolers are. They're not reading the room because they're only thinking about themselves, which is normal. That is developmentally appropriate. But we talked to our sixth graders about when you walk in the room, if you're, first of all, everyone's only worried about themselves, so they don't actually even notice what you're wearing or whatever. But what is the room? And we would show them without any sound, video clips of TV shows. So there's no sound. What's happening? Who's upset? How do you know? If you were walking in, what would your plan be? It was just kind of a fun way, and we had like Home Alone and some different things like that that kids had seen before. Read the room so that you can adapt and decide how you're gonna react. Those pieces, I can guarantee you, when I was in school in the 80s, nobody was thinking about, what can Teresa read a room? Right? Does she care that she should be on time? I'm not sure, but now we know how important those things are. I'm gonna share a video with you. And there's this organization, it's called the World Economic Forum. It's a think tank, national think tank. And they do really exciting things like deep studies of corporations across the globe. And they ask them and interview them and take data to answer this question. What are employers looking for in employees? What do they need? Not just to get in, but to thrive, right? We don't want our kids to just get there. We want them to thrive once they're there. Well, they used to do this survey every 5 years, and now they've gone to every 2 years. That suggests something too, just about the pace of change. Okay, so I'm going to play this video. Here's a warning for you so that you can get yourself ready to listen. He has an accent and he talks super fast. Okay, so I'm just queuing you up for a kind of listening here. But let's hear what he has to say about the top 10 skills that companies are saying they need for 2027.
In your career, the World Economic Forum just came up with the top 10 skills that employees will need in 2027. Start mastering these skills today. Creative thinking, analytical thinking, technological literacy, curiosity and lifelong learning, resilience, flexibility and agility, systems thinking, AI and big data, motivation and self-awareness, talent management, service orientation and customer service. I personally believe there will be a huge demand for people who have tangible AI skills. Even just an understanding of how AI can be applied to your everyday job, I think will make a world of difference.
Okay. That was a lot.
They also have graphics on their website that are like great Venn diagrams.
They have some, I'm like a data nerd, so I
Yeah.
do love it, but I find people prefer a video, even with the guy with an accent who talks fast. Here's what I would love for you to do. I'm gonna give you maybe two things to do, two directions that you should do. You've got your sticky notes. And when I'm done talking and giving you directions, you can pop them on the two sides of there, just so we can kind of have a list. If you've got them, if you don't want to, don't, I'm cool with that. And then talk to somebody you haven't talked to yet in here about what you heard on here. What surprised you? All right, so pop your sticky notes up and have a conversation. All right, let's roll. Cramp in my legs. Yeah, pop them up there, yeah, and then have a conversation with somebody. Yeah.
I actually got my document today.
No.
All right, talk to somebody you haven't talked to about what you heard in there. I definitely can play it again. Because it was so fast, the accent.
Yeah.
You're looking to get ahead of people in your career. The World Economic Forum just came up with the top 10 skills that employees will need in 2027. Start mastering these skills today. Creative thinking, analytical thinking, technological literacy, curiosity and lifelong learning, resilience, flexibility and agility, systems thinking, AI and big data, motivation and self-awareness, talent management, service orientation, customer service. I personally believe there will be a huge demand for people with AI skills. Even just an understanding of how AI can be applied to everyday job, I think will make a world of difference.
Yeah. Already happened.
Yeah.
All right, wrap up your conversation and come on back.
You know, that's weird. I mean, you did okay, right? It's not so, but it is that.
All right, we're gonna keep moving. Just like the kids. So if you guys want to come on back, thanks. So yeah. This every time I play that video, people, it's fascinating, right? And it's this juxtaposition, like I'm a little afraid of the AI for my kids and all that, but gosh, they have to know how to use it. Like, what do we do, right? It's not easy. I'm not saying it's easy. The big idea here is that left side, that's traditionally what we think school preparation is. on the right side is what they're saying, suggesting is what's gonna make people successful. And that's successful post-secondary, so if you want your kid to do a 4-year something or another, or maybe more important, if your kid wants to do a 4-year something or another. If your kid goes into the service, kid goes right into the world of work, all of those things are necessary. So it's not about getting kids into college, like that, I feel like that preparation is narrow and perhaps misguided. Right?
And there's so many different routes to college these days that
Oh.
the traditional route almost seems kind of silly and ridiculous. once you
And
start paying
expensive.
for it. So,
And having been the person to write checks for a whole bunch of kids, yes. So here's the thing. Those pieces on the left are measured. And we see them. We've got tests. And they come out in the newspaper and you get a little newsletter and all the things. Okay? Those on the right are what the competency-based education is about, which is they're not going to be measured on a test. How do we measure somebody's ability to read a room? We don't. There's no test for it. And I don't think we want one. But rather, it's about being transparent with learners that they need to have these skills. And then having the learners start to collect their own evidence that they grew in these skills over time. That's one of the gists of competency-based. Okay? It's a shift for our mom and dad brains. Because we're like, not on the report card, girl, I don't think you're telling me the truth. That was me. Okay, and I was the assistant superintendent, so, and I was like, whatever, Ellie, you know, Megan, try again. But my kids were collecting their own evidence over time that they were growing in those skills. All right, and it really, their ability to know where their strengths lie and where their weaknesses were was the most important thing. And it wasn't a teacher telling him, you're a C in that. It was like, I'm not so great at this, but I'm really, really good at this. Okay? That's part of this. So we need new outcomes. We are not going to get new outcomes. Yes?
Yeah, just on what you just said, to what end? So acknowledging, I think self-awareness is a absolute, like, that's a great goal in an educational setting. So having that self-awareness, is that self-awareness of, okay, I am good at this, so
Yep.
I lean into this, or is this self-awareness so that you are aware that, oh, I have a deficiency and I should work on it?
Yes.
How does that play?
Yes. I can tell you this. What typically, what I've seen work really, really well in systems like I was in is when those kids are about 4th through 9th grade. It's saying, okay, the communication thing, like I had a kid who her whole goal was to, like, melt into the carpet. Do you want to talk to people? How's that working for you? We got to work on that. We got to work on that. We got to work on that. She's a teacher now, so it worked out. But at a certain point, just like with us, and a kid's trying to figure out their trajectory, what am I doing after this? We want kids to align themselves with their strengths, right? And so if your strengths, if you want to become, here's a great example, as a middle school principal, kid came in, he was a frequent flyer in the office, if you know what I mean. And I was like, just so frustrated with him one day. I'm like, dude, what is your plan? I'm going to be a doctor. And I was like, really? Because you're not empathetic. Here's your science scores. So, like, does that seem like a great career path for you? And if it's what you really want, these are the 2 areas we really have to focus on. So you're helping kids have enough awareness so that when they're picking a trajectory, that it's aligned with their strengths. Okay, because sometimes what happens, and this is a huge thing that was happening in the late 90s, early 2000s, is everybody was going to college and they had no idea why. Because they didn't even really understand what they were interested in, which we're going to get to. And then, right, and then what the path that aligns to my strengths.
and then there's this delayed adulthood, like we're children don't really know who they are until they're 25 or adults, because they never had the chance to develop.
Well, and the thing is now, the one thing I feel like is got way better than it was been is
We figured it out.
we talk to kids about career clusters, not a job. Right? So here's a cluster of careers kind of around that idea that would be well suited for those strengths. So we do broaden that for kids. Let me tell you more and see if this helps you. So here are some things to consider. Our system is perfectly designed to meet the expectations for which it was designed, which was to sort kids, have them be compliant, and give them some basic knowledge. That is what the education system was designed for, and it's doing a great job at that. But that's not what we need. Our system is not designed for careers we don't even know what they are. Those durable skills, that's what we're writing down. That's what I call them. I don't call them soft skills. I'm on a one-woman mission to get rid of the phrase soft skills, because there is nothing soft about them. And I call them durable skills because no matter what you do or your trajectory changes, or you're like, I'm gonna be a nurse. I had a kid, she wanted to be in the medical field, da, da, da. She did a shadow as a freshman at the hospital. She came home, she's like, no, can't do it. It smells funny. I don't want to touch people. Okay, let's cross that off the list, which I think is equally as important as adding things to the list, as crossing off, right? And having kids be designers and innovators. Our system, as we experience it, was not designed for that. Your district is looking to shift that. So we cannot just pick up strategies like, let's try this and let's try this. No. And we are at a beautiful point right now. There's so much science about how people learn. We're using the science. Okay? So we're not using history. Like, well, this is how this worked for me. This is how I learned to read. Okay, every kid's different. Even yours, even the one you gave birth to looks just like you and acts just like you. She's gonna learn different than you do. We're not gonna do it what makes us comfortable, because we're used to it. And it's not gonna be a fad. Okay, it's about research. So there's a guy named Hattie. He's doing a ton of research about learning. And this is just like Hattie 101. He's found some practices scientifically that accelerate learning, meaning kids learn more in a year than what typically they would learn in a year, and some that are actually damaging to learning. So check this out. Lectures, damaging to learning. Probably because they go like right here with boredom, okay? Dependency on the teacher. And I always say, if you're confused about this with education, just think about it as parenting. If you continue to parent your kids so that they need you for everything, they're never going to leave. And we love them, and I miss my 4. And then I'm really glad they all live somewhere else. And they're fully functioning adults, paying their bills, making life happen in their own relationships with varying success because they're in their 20s, right? The whole goal is that they don't need us. That's the goal. So here's some that are really powerful. So these are strategies we can use in the classroom that accelerate learning. We teach kids self-judgment and reflection, not self-judgment like it first feels, but like, I did this thing, I made this product, here's how I did it, and here's where my success is, and here's where I fell short. But not having the teacher tell them that, but to get to the point where they know that. That's a lot of work, right? It's a lot of work. It's like when your kid's like, I cleaned my bedroom. And I learned from someone smarter than me. I would say to them, like, clean like I'm gonna be jumping up and down, it's so exciting, or clean like I'm gonna side-eye you. And then you'd be like, hold on. And they would go up there and make the judgment themselves. That's the goal, right? Teaching students to drive their own learning. In the video we heard, learning how to learn. The one thing I've learned from having all these 20-somethings in jobs is each and every one of them has had to do some additional learning at the company or job they're in. And So we have 3 girls and a boy, and our boy's the youngest, and he equals all the girls, okay, I'm just putting that out there. He's a lot of fun and super challenging, he's everything I deserve, according to my dad. He didn't like school, he's a mechanic for Toyota, and he's making more money than 2 of the girls right now, so he's doing well. He got the job, he did a 2-year program, went to Toyota, came over for dinner and said, they're making me do Toyota University. I thought I was done learning. I'm like, you really saying that to me? But that's part of it, how you have to know how to learn. And we have to help our kids figure out how to do that. So this is what could look like in our classrooms. So each learner starting from their own level. And the goal isn't about doing what 3rd graders do, doing what 5th graders do, but it's doing better tomorrow than you did today. It's just about growing, right? So the phrase we used in our district is, it doesn't matter where you are, but you better be moving. You have to be growing. You've not arrived. Even if you're at level, you have to be growing. Each learner is guided to be self-aware enough to discover their interests and strengths. Now, that is definitely a process over time. Many, many kids for a long time left school not knowing what they were excited about, because they had just been on the school treadmill, just taking the classes, just making some teachers happy, keeping their parents off their back. And now it's time to make a decision in their life. Right? So how can adults provide time and space for discovery and feedback? One of the big things in competency learning is kids getting out there in the world and seeing what's actually happening. Right? We talked about that, sending kids out so they know what to cross off the list of things they never want to do. Super important. Learners' next steps are guided by currently what they're competent at, which is informed by multiple pieces of evidence. Okay, so let's take a little. They're ready to move on to the next reading level, perhaps not just by a test, but by the 2 or 3 times that teacher and that teacher heard that learner reading and comprehending that text. It's like, I've seen you do that a couple of times. Let's move to this one. Not just a test. There's not a test that's going to dictate what you're doing the next day, but multiple pieces of evidence. Learning is found in all areas of a student's life. There are teachers all around our kids. And how can we honor that really rich learning our kids are doing after 2:35 or 3:07 or whatever weird time your kids are done? Right? Are they playing sports? Are they in a club? Okay, I know my own personal kids, when you did stay at grandma's, you went and helped the quilt ladies measure things. That was huge. That's how Jack learned to measure. Him and the old German quilt ladies who were feeding him cookies and stuff like that. That's real learning. How can he collect that evidence of his measurement skills, not on a test, and show that as evidence of learning? That's a piece of this. Here's what it isn't, because sometimes people are like, I thought it was this. It is not a lowering of expectations. So we're not saying, we don't need to do that reading or writing math anymore. We're going to do this other stuff. No. Okay. Those foundational skills are still essential, right? We have to have people be discerning readers and discerning listeners. One of the seminars that we ran at our high school was called Fake News or No, right? And the kids dug deep into that. It was a very popular seminar. Not an opportunity for kids to opt out of rigorous learning. So when we started, this was something our kids thought they could do. We gave kids a lot of choices about what they could do and how they could show their learning. And some of the kids, they were middle schoolers, would say, I choose no. I'm not going to learn that. What? That's not what this is. Okay? Their voice matters, but it's still guided by adults who are significantly wiser than they are, perhaps not smarter. It's not an unproven fad. I shared with you some of the science. It's not a program that can be purchased for a school district. This used to happen a lot. People would come into our district and it would kind of blow your mind. And then they, people in Chris's position come up to me and they'd be like, so do you have the binder of this? I'll just buy that. It's like, no, that's not how this works. Because context matters. Right? What worked in my community is not going to work in your community. It's a different community. Different kids. Different needs. Wonderings or thoughts on these two slides, what it is, what it isn't. I'm going to show you some.
So you were a principal at public school
I was the assistant superintendent in the public school district.
and implementing.
Oh, yes.
What state?
Wisconsin.
In around here, you can see like Parkway has a specific
Yep.
school that. It's most.
But not the district though, just like.
Correct, most of that. and those.
Yep.
Those having already farther along in the journey.
For sure.
We have a lot of things available to us that accelerates.
Yeah, and it took us almost 9 years to get there, but we were first. And so one of the benefits is, like, as the district moves down this path, I can say to Chris, don't do that.
Yeah.
Right? Like, don't do the same dumb things I did. And there will be some mistakes, right? It's a human business.
2 questions.
Yeah.
Ideally, it sounds wonderful. Everywhere, when you move away from standardization, you're talking about personalization.
Yes.
The trade-off there oftentimes is additional resources required. Additional time of individual teachers to personalize that, additional teachers in general, so that you can provide that personalized learning. Is that a factor in this? How do you kind of
Mhm.
even that out so that it's not resource constrained?
Yeah.
Or there are additional resources?
Yeah.
To be allocated.
Yes, and so I would say it changes how people's time is used.
That's the biggest.
Yeah, and
We were inefficient in many ways.
Incredibly.
Well,
I mean,
system.
we're set up for person at the front who knows everything and a lot of listeners. In the district that I came from, what we went to was I never allowed a teacher to be by themselves in a room because one teacher and kids is not a great model. So we put groups of kids together, so 2 classes. So now we have 50 kids and 2 teachers, which you're like, 50 kids, what are you, nuts? It was amazing what happened, because now one of the teachers is running small groups and the other one's moving around and helping kids. So how the teacher's time is used is differently. Secondly, it's not teachers personalizing for kids, it's kids and teachers co-designing. So some of the load is on the learner. And one of the big pieces we work with the teachers on when we're doing professional development, my colleague Kate is going to be working with teachers here, is what are we doing for kids that they could be doing for themselves? So kindergartners in my district, and we have 4-year-old kindergarten in Wisconsin, but these were 5Kers. They would be collecting their own evidence of their reading growth, right? So my Jack went to kindergarten. He knew 0 of the letters. The first letter of his name, J, he called fishhook, right? What's going on? So he had every week, his goal was to learn 5 more letters in kindergarten. It was his goal. He had to have ideas of how he was going to meet that goal. The teacher met with him in small groups. She did instruction. Every time he met that goal, he'd take his little Chromebook, he'd go sit at the side, he'd start a Google Meet and hit record. Mom, I learned these letters. Here's what they are. I wrote them. Here's what they are. Send. He sent me a video. He's collecting the evidence. He's the communicator at home. So some of the roles shift. Okay. Initially, it is challenging on the teachers because it's different. Right? But we're really trying to get a system built for the learner, not so much the adult.
To kind of piggyback off of her question, what additional resources are going to be provided to the parents or knowledge to foster this at home?
Sure. Well, that's a good one.
That's why, for me, it was so important for this night to exist.
Yep.
So this is the first step of the journey. And at home, you come back for our second and our third night, and we start crafting that together, because I'm a dad of 2 girls, but you also know what your kids need, and then we can provide the collaboration together.
Is this definitely what the district is
It
doing?
is in the strategic plan. So
Okay.
it is, this is a tangible step towards where we'd like to be.
And it's not for some students, though, for all students, all learners.
I can tell you the biggest, the most effective strategy we use is we made learners, as we call them, chief communicating officers. And so that not all the communication about everything that's happening at school came from the teacher to you. Because maybe this doesn't happen in your house, but sometimes when that happens, I call your house, your kid did this today, and the kid's like, no, she don't like me, right? So now it's, and not just when they're in trouble, but how are we making the learner the communicator to you about what happened in their day? So when you say what happened today, they're not like, nothing.
Like in my kid's classroom, like the teacher doesn't have a newsletter, I get a handwritten.
Yep.
My kid newsletter after. So my kid's ability to summarize, put together the content, where they excel, where they maybe didn't do so great, like she's not a student, so like being able to tell that story, like that's an example of something simple that we do that can create an environment where we're practicing our informational writing for a specific audience.
Yes.
And doing that at the.
What school district is your child at?
Currently.
Yes, ma'am.
Just on the last slide, you had said like this isn't like a package that you
Yeah,
can purchase,
yeah.
right? And so it seems like this is a pretty time intensive
Yes.
process in which you all who have experience in it are gonna be working for your district.
Correct.
Is that kind of like an ongoing, like, I'm asking just transparently about like financing, like, is this like a consulting agreement with your organization?
Yes.
Or is your organization funded a different way? It's
Nope.
consulting fees
Correct.
paid.
Yes.
Just
Yep.
that.
Yeah, no, I think it's a worthy question. And my colleagues who come here, I'm working with the leadership team. And my colleagues all are within a 5-7 years of being in classrooms that did this work and are in classrooms all the time.
How long will you guys be working?
Yeah, that,
Foreseeable future.
yeah.
I could say like you could start in 5 years or over the next 5 years.
It is starting, we are here.
Okay, but
It
like,
has begun.
my kid graduated in 5 years.
Yep.
He'd be affected by this.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Here, I'm giving you examples of a system that's more fully formed. What you're gonna start seeing is pieces.
I've been a middle school educator for 17 years.
Yeah.
I'm still like, is this project-based learning? This is like.
So-
not like standards-based grading? I'm
Yes.
still not even
Yes.
sure what you're talking about.
Yeah, so here are some different ways it shows up, right? Inquiry-based learning is one of them. Inquiry-based learning is where a learner has a big question, right? So Jack's big question in 6th grade was, how are those Harley-Davidson motorcycles built? So Harley's in her backyard, 6th grade. He learned how to email the people at Harley. He got schematics. I drove him down there one day and he got a personal tour. He got a mentor. I mean, so he was reading, writing, reporting, doing all the things around his big question. Okay, so that's one way, is that inquiry. Like, how can we get kids come into kindergarten with tons of questions. Research would suggest by 3rd grade, they have none. That's not because there's something wrong with the kid, right? We've just kind of stomped out their curiosity.
I have a question.
Mhm.
How is this like, so the gap here, so how is this affecting gifted learners? Like, how are they a part of the equation?
This is, I will say this to me is the answer to all the levels, because it doesn't matter where you start, you've got to be growing. Here's our biggest challenge with our highest learners. Top quartile kids have the smallest growth. Do you know why? There's nothing wrong with them. It's because the system's teaching to the grade level standards and that kid's already has them.
Okay, me and my mom.
Yep. So if you take your child from where they are and they can keep going, right? So I had one of my kids who did Algebra 2, and if anybody's taken Algebra 2, I don't even know which way the worksheet's up or anything on it, but she finished it in 4 months. I have another kid who took 18 months to finish Algebra 2. They're both fine. Nobody's living in my house. Right? So it's great for that. And it's great for our kids who are struggling because it's about growth.
And
So
I think what's really, once you know that this can all be documented, the child's demonstrating their knowledge, and once you can see it documented and shared, then you see this whole portfolio grow versus just 1, 2, 3, 4, that makes no sense. Our 1, 2, 3, 4 elementary scale, by the way, is. I can't fix everything.
Well, and it's a process. This is definitely, to your point, it's a process and it's gonna take time. I want to respect, I want to respect everyone's time. So if you feel like you need to go, feel free. Otherwise, I will be happy to answer questions. Yes.
You talked about potentially 2 teachers with 50 students. How does that work architecturally in terms of coming into a district, obviously, or any school where spaces are the size that they
Yeah,
are?
there's a lot of creative ways of doing that. I sometimes I had a 7th grade team. They would start their day in their meeting with they had, it was like 60 kids. They would start their morning in the cafeteria space because it's not used in the morning. So we've got big chunks of our building that we use for 90 minutes a day, which is weird. But that's where they would start. And then it was, the kids got their schedule for the day or their plan. So the rooms were right next door to each other. And then they'd go there and they'd be floating between. Here's the other thing, when you put 2 teachers together with 2 groups of kids, the adults multiply. Because maybe some of those kids in there have an IEP and a special education paraeducator or teacher comes with them. Or maybe they're gifted and talented, the gifted and talented person comes in. Or you've got kids in there who English is a second language and that teacher's in. I've walked into classrooms where it's like, there's 4 adults in here. Sometimes when you put kids together, those extra supplemental adults can come and be another person. So, other school districts that over time have taken down walls. Okay. And I learned a whole lot about load bearing that I never wanted to know. So there's that.
So I don't know if this is a question for you or for, it's a district question,
Mhm.
so. Why is the district moving in this direction? I love it, but I just.
Chris, what are your?
Yeah, I mean, I think the short answer is, the strategic planning committee saw that the world was sort of evolving, and we had to think about problems differently. And one of the ways to think about problems differently is shifting to either competency-based or learner-centered, where you're putting a kid at the center and you're using their interests to drive instruction. You'll see that if you walk through RECC, that is the core belief of RECC, and then it stops, and that's part of the work, So see, yeah, if you were to tease this out and lay it over the top of Reggio Emilia, you see some tremendous overlap.
Huge. Right, not all parts of this are new.
I was gonna say, I run a school that's K-8 right now, and it's mixed age learning. It's a private school, but it's 100% learner based, 100% competency based. We don't, because we have our scales totally different. And it's all about choice and time for the child to learn, and then preparing an environment for them to learn. Sky's the limit, but when you're in a public school, just a lot more hurdles. And
It's just, sometimes the
But-
numbers are what.
What I saw too was the universities now are all like so welcoming to this new.
Yep. Yeah.
You know, way for applications and admissions.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Like,
that's
such a big
real.
program.
Oh,
It's real.
My husband.
Yep.
Yeah.